Yes.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to start with the big injury news from last night, a potentially significant one. Kawhi Leonard with thoracic spasms in a home loss on Tuesday night against the Wolves. Bill, he left the arena after the
Brutal.
first quarter, not just came out of the game, left the arena, not what you want to see from Kawhi.
The word that comes to mind, and I don't have any insight into what the injury is going to be. They're keeping it pretty close to the vest. We'll see. But dire, John, that a lot of times I try to react with a little bit of optimism, even if it's worrisome. But with Kawhi Leonard, and I'm sure you're the same way, I'm just muscle memoried. If he is hurt, hell, if he comes down hard on a big play, even if he bounces right
Yeah.
back up, he's one of those guys where I don't just hold my breath for him, I hold it for the team because if he's not available, if he's banged up, if he's not reliable going forward, neither are the Clippers for me, full stop.
I feel awful for Clippers fans about this because, bracing for that. Like, is it going to happen? Is Kawhi going to get hurt again? Is PG going to get hurt? They've been available most of the season. They've both been very good. And obviously since December, the Clippers have been the second best team in the NBA after the Boston Celtics, but you hate to see this. And you kind of wait for it. Like in my previous media stops covering the NBA, one of my producers here in Los Angeles is a massive Clippers fan. He's like one of 7 actual
11.
Clippers fans.
Are there 7 now? 4 of them
There's
moved
double
east?
digit now. They're moving into the Intuit Dome.
Right.
But I tweeted at him last night, like, you're welcome back to the injury inevitability support group. You never left, right? Because like we have it with Philadelphians, have it with Joel Embiid, and I feel like the Clippers super have it with Kawhi and PG. Now we don't know the extent of it, but it doesn't sound great.
And I think part of the reason it's more frustrating, and I'm a neutral, right? You're a neutral. You and I are not one of the 7, 11 Clippers fans. But I convinced myself and let myself believe they were an actual, maybe they still are, a legitimate title contender. They are deep. They are good. I mean, they've been a little lax. They've been a little mediocre of late. Last year, at this point, Kawhi had missed almost 30 games. This year, the guys missed, I think it's 6. I think they're 3-3 without him. Right? So he's been healthy and he's been playing. And it allowed me, in combination, this idea that he's durable, in combination with just how good they look when they look good, to think, all right, if it's not Denver, and I know we've had this talk a lot, like just away from the pod before it launched on Monday, the Clippers are easily a team that you could put as the most likely or second most likely team after the Nuggets to come out of the West if they're healthy. And now it feels like we're back where we were again, just worrying that he's more Humpty Dumpty than he is NBA Finals MVP in waiting.
Yeah, it's not a great time, right? Because the playoffs are like rapidly approaching, and also they've kind of like slid back a little bit, the Clippers. I mean, they were really crushing it before the break. They've lost 2 in a row. Defensively, they're sliding a little bit. They had been middle of the pack all season. Post All-Star break, they're 24th in defensive rating. And not for nothing, Kawhi remains their best defender by a million miles. Last night, they started him on Ant-Man, right? And Edwards, he had him locked up.
Yep.
The Clippers ended up building a 22-point lead. Now, some of that was without Kawhi after he went out, but you could see it, right? Like they built this lead. Kawhi looked awesome playing defense. And then all of a sudden he's hurt, and the whole complexion of that team changed. And the Wolves ended up coming back from 22 down to like really blow the doors off of the Clippers on their floor. And then on top of that, Bill, now the Clippers have not great timing either in terms of the schedule. They got a back-to-back starting tomorrow. They go to Chicago, and then they play the Pelicans, who we mentioned on the Monday show. Pelicans are breathing down their neck for that 4th spot. They're only
playing good basketball. I'm going to steal a term from soccer since we started a little Barca love. To quote soccer media, he put Ant in his pocket. He pocketed him, right? He took him out of the mix. And it's such an interest. It's a bummer, but it's such. Before things went bad, it was such a reminder. It's why I believed in the Clippers this year. You're watching the game thinking, oh, that's right. Kawhi Leonard can literally single-handedly take over a game, not just offensively, defensively. He can lock down who he needs to. And we know that in big games in the playoffs, when he's healthy, 2-time finals MVP, 2 different teams, the guy can also win you games on offense. And then immediately, to your point, the script flips and it's, oh, that's right. But that's the other side, is the moment the guy leaves, the Clippers are capable of blowing a huge lead. The guy that he pocketed is suddenly just doing what he does. Kawhi is so important. And I was thinking about how often we've talked, the media fans, about Jimmy Butler and like playoff Jimmy. And that's a real thing. I'm not taking anything away. Kawhi is that times 10. I mean, Kawhi is that, but he actually wins NBA championships and he is a finals MVP. And I know any team that loses their star, John, is probably going to have trouble. But the Clippers in particular, If Kawhi Leonard isn't reliably healthy, they are not a reliable contender, and they go back to being what they've always been, which is, and I don't mean to be harsh, a loser. This was the chance this year maybe to close that window on always coming up short, and we'll see what
It's
the
just
deal is.
it's such an fingers crossed that it's not going to be a long-term deal because I'd like to see Kawhi out there. But when you take him out of that team, like, yes, offensively, they have a number of different options, and they've really been living through their offense for much of the season anyway, right? They were kind of like middle of the pack in terms of the entire season defensively. As I mentioned, post All-Star break, they've kind of slid back a little bit, but you still have Kawhi to go, okay,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
Kawhi, and I'm going to, in this March 12 matchup against the Wolves, who we are playing and battling for playoff position, I will guard the toughest guy, and that's Ant Edwards. I'm going to lock him up. And not for nothing, for those of you who paid attention to the Monday edition, the debut episode, we mentioned this bet that Bill and I have prior to the Cat injury. I had made a bet with Bill that I will take the Wolves in a first round series against the Suns, the Warriors, or the Lakers. Bill decided to go the other route. Cat immediately got injured. Hey, by the way, no, I mean, like almost immediately, like we agreed on the bet, and then he got hurt.
I feel bad for Cat, not for you. That's what that laugh was, just FYI.
But now with them jockeying for position in the 3-4 spot, right?
Yeah.
This injury, depending on what it is for Kawhi, could also influence that again. But I wanted to ask you the question. This is obviously a significant injury to the Clippers in the same way that the Cat injury was a significant injury to the Wolves. Which one's more impactful to their team?
Oh, wow. So what's a bigger loss, Kawhi or Cat?
Kawhi to the Clips or Cat to the Wolves?
Great question. It's a no-brainer for me.
I ask questions for a living.
I love it. It is beyond a doubt Kawhi Leonard. It's beyond a doubt. And there's a couple of reasons, and some of this is my own sort of perspective that could be wrong. Obviously, based on the bet that we've made, I don't think at this stage Minnesota is or would be a contender, even if Cat is healthy. I think that the Clippers are good enough to win an NBA championship if they have Kawhi Leonard. So for me, you remove one guy, you go from being a championship contender to not. And obviously on the other side, I don't think they're a contender. But also, we talked about this, I think, last week before the pod launched. I think Anthony Edwards, he's not good enough to carry this team through multiple playoff series, but he is good enough to look like a top 5 or top 6 player, at least offensively, when there is no Cat. He's got to take on the load. He's got to be the guy. And that has mostly been true, except for that one quarter where Kawhi wasn't hurt yesterday. So it's just a reminder that the Timberwolves, I think, still can have some offense, but Kawhi is so good, and you already made this point, he can literally shut down the guy who can fill in for Cat. To me, Kawhi Leonard is a top 3 to 5 player in the NBA in the playoffs if you think he's going to play all of the games in the postseason. Cat is not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably Kawhi as well. But you have not given proper credit to this Wolves team all season long. When you tell me that
maybe it is proper credit.
Defense, when you tell me that the team with the best defense in the NBA up through what we have a month left of the regular season isn't a real championship contender, I take umbrage with that. I think they are.
I'm willing to give you Minnesota if you'll tell me you think Cleveland's a real contender, because they have very similar numbers and stats and approach, and like number 1 defense, number 2 defense, number 16, 17th offense, number 8. Do you buy into Cleveland? The only difference is that Cleveland's record is not quite as good, and they're not at the top of the Eastern Conference because of Boston.
Cleveland currently 3rd in defensive rating. If they had been 2nd, maybe, but no,
they were. No,
you're right. Like,
most of the year,
it's very similar. I will say though that the difference is that like Anthony Edwards is a prime time top tier scorer. Right, we saw that last night in their comeback
under the lights too.
Yeah, under the lights when they needed it.
But Donovan Mitchell, maybe not.
Right. Well, I mean, Donovan Mitchell doesn't have, I think, that 1A, and Cat is sort of that 1A offensively. And you unplug him from that Wolves team, and all of a sudden the offense craters because they've only been an okay offensive team. Asking Ant to, Cat. So taking him out, unplugging him is a problem. Real quick before we move on, because we got to get it to OG Anunoby's comeback. I wanted to mention this too. So the Wolves have been on a road trip, right? They still have a road trip coming up.
I love this. I know you're going. Yeah.
They played Tuesday night, last night in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And they beat the Clippers. Big win for them. They do not play again until Saturday. Saturday, they play in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah.
The team took a little vote, and they decided to just stay in Los Angeles until Friday. Only Rudy Gobert wanted to go to Utah early because
that was the lone vote.
There forever. Funny. He was the only one because he knows a bunch of people. How do you feel about a Wolves team battling for playoff position with several off days in Los Angeles against the Los Angeles nightlife?
I'm the wrong guy to ask. I know you ask questions for a living, but because when I covered on the beat, every time there would be. I mean, look, this is not a shot at Detroit. I feel like I can't tell you how many times I skipped Detroit games and came up with some reason for my boss that I have to do a feature, but the feature was always in Chicago or New York. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you're on the road and LA's cool. And by the way, it's March and the weather, you and I are both here, is
It's beautiful.
amazing. It's not amazing everywhere else. So I am at them. Now I'll say this. I like Salt Lake City. It's a sneaky fun town for a couple nights. But if I'm choosing between Salt Lake and LA, I'm staying in LA too.
Look, you get Wednesday, Thursday, have at it, have a good time. Friday,
Yeah,
you got to
party.
get back about your business. And we should mention also, as producer Aaron mentioned, that the Wolves, who you continually disparage, have
Yes, I
now
do.
won the
Sure.
season series over the Clips 3-1. So with the tiebreaker, basically makes it a 4-game lead with 16 games to go. So highly unlikely that the Clips are going to pass them as we move forward to the playoffs.